Welcome to the OnChain Report, where we talk to Web3 industry leaders about what's happening and where things are going. I'm your host, Carl DiClemente, and today we're welcoming Eleni Steinman, co-founder and CEO of LoopCrypto. By the end of today's episode, we want you, the audience, to tell us, are crypto payments a thing? Is this the future of commerce? Eleni, welcome. Want to get us started with a brief introduction?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Eleni. I'm one of the co-founders of LoopCrypto. I entered the space in 2017, and at the first crypto company I worked at is where I met my co-founder Shane, and we left to solve this problem of crypto payments because it's something we personally felt at the old company and thought we had a good solution of how to make payments simpler and easier in Web3.
That's great. So let's maybe talk a little bit about your company, LoopCrypto. It seems like a pretty aptly named Web3 recurring payments company. You want to talk to us a little bit about what you guys do and who your customers are?
Yeah, definitely. So the problem that Shane and I realized was missing in Web3 is actually this idea of automation. So again, at this old crypto company, I think a lot of people use Coinbase Commerce, which is honestly just a nice checkout page. It shows you a wallet address, and then your customer needs to send you money to that wallet. And they have to do this every single month. So they have to remember to come back to your website, log in with their wallet, send you funds. And that means you're spending time following up with them. And the key feature that's missing here is automation, right? In Web2, you give someone your credit card, you give them permission to spend, and then they let you know and they charge you every single month. And it's good for both people because it really decreases the amount of overhead for both the customer and the merchant, um, as well as the benefit here is you can track data a lot better. So in Web3, we spend a lot of time asking people for their transaction hash so we can confirm the transaction took place and know who the money is from. But with our system, that all natively flows in because it's a pull.
That's huge. We leverage Coinbase Commerce here at QuickNode with our enterprise customers. And, I've worked in the Web3 space for a while. I can attest to what a challenge it is to accept payments. And we can dive more into that a little bit later for sure. Maybe let's talk about what are some people that you're working with today?
Yeah, so we work a lot with developer tooling companies, indexing companies, so companies like Satsuma, who are providing indexing services to crypto companies, or companies like Integral that are providing accounting services. Again, in all of our cases, the end customer is someone like a crypto company that lives and breathes crypto every day, or it's someone like a DeFi trader. So, like Nansen, for example, a lot of their customers are traders who want to get market data and they live and breathe in crypto. They often earn in crypto, and you could be anywhere in the world. And most of these companies are based in the US, but could have customers somewhere that don't have access to dollars, don't have access to credit cards, and crypto provides them a cheap, easy way to accept payment.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, huge shout out to the Satsuma folks. They're good partners of ours. I was talking to them last week, and they really appreciate and talked very highly of your product. So definitely a good partner on both of our sides, it sounds like. What are
Awesome. Yeah, no.
Yeah, John over there is great. Really, really like him.
Yeah.
So what are the maybe bigger examples for someone who might be less involved in the blockchain space, right? There's obviously ENS, that's a pretty big name, but if you're not a Web3 native, what are some maybe typical companies or people outside of the Web3 sphere that are accepting crypto payments?
Yeah. So I think we saw a lot of companies that were getting into perhaps like the NFT space want to be, well, if you sell an NFT, you by nature, you have to accept crypto because that's what they're purchased in.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a good list of like Web2 companies that dabbled in Web3. our perspective, honestly, is that Web3 payments is really going to start by serving a Web3 customer. And so we've built our infrastructure in a way today that those who live and breathe crypto are getting the most benefit. But as a lot of these companies perhaps enter the space, uh, our technology will work well for them. Um, I mean, a good example is we chatted with the Stripe team and they were telling us about Stripe Connect, which helps with cross border payments. And the reason they chose to allow Stripe to help with these cross-border payments is because there are some country pairs that right now are not connected by the typical banking system. And crypto, just by its very nature of being decentralized, allows for those pairs and allows people in other countries to do commerce with each other. And so, in my opinion, it's just a matter of time before crypto is the rails and maybe an end consumer just has no idea that's the case.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think you make a good point here. This is just kind of just an image I searched around and found, but you have to be careful with headlines, right? Headlines that might say, for example, Coca-Cola accepts Bitcoin or crypto or whatever it is, right? I haven't dug into Coca-Cola to know that specific example, but it's very likely that, it's just the NFT that they launched. Obviously, they had to accept Ether for someone to be able to purchase it, right? So I think that's something for, the listeners, that it's important. All the time you're going to see these headlines, this company is doing this company is doing that, but you really have to maybe scratch below the surface a little bit to understand more deeply if this is something that's real.
Yeah. But it's not good for the crypto industry if these companies are willing to put their logo next to crypto.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I think we've seen more and more. And even if it's a small little NFT project that, was for a small segment of their customers, it is exciting to see that people are testing it out, because that also is taking an initial step towards maybe moving past some regulatory hurdles or getting some comfort there around some adoption.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, maybe from the audience, would love to see if you drop a comment down in the section below. Would love to hear what you've spent your crypto on, other than obviously crypto assets like NFTs or swaps or something like that. Have you ever used a crypto payment to buy a product? Have you ever used crypto payment to pay for a service? Love to hear what it is. So, Eleni, you touched on this a little bit, but let's go into more detail about, why a company might want to accept crypto payments. What is the advantage for them?
Yeah. So the one I mentioned already is accessing a wider customer base. There just could be users of yours that live in a country where they don't have access to USD, or it's hard to do a cross-border payment. Another big one is there's no chargebacks, right? Like the way Loop works is, well, we can see your wallet and we're not going to charge you if you don't have enough funds to cover the transaction. The other benefit there is we can alert both parties that the transaction is not going to get executed before it's actually due. So we send reminder emails to the end customer to let them know that this bill is going to take place. And in the same email, we basically tell them, hey, looks like you don't have enough money. If you don't top it up, like, you may lose your purchase or subscription or whatnot. Another big one that companies love is there's a lot lower fees. If you're using credit cards, you're probably paying like 3% fees. At Loop, we charge fees based on gas. So if you're on a low gas network, like an L2, I mean, it's really pennies. And that can be a huge difference, especially for a company that has a high subscription dollar amount. And, actually, we chat a little bit about this. Another sort of benefit to the end company is when customers price in crypto, they tend not to convert back to dollars. So you can be someone who is like crypto wealthy and you might be more willing to spend your crypto in a way that you would hesitate if it was, in US dollars. And so this is, obviously a net benefit to the company. The one thing I wanted to point out is, I mean, those are examples of why you want to accept crypto payments, but a reason for an end customer to want to pay in crypto is you actually have a lot more control. So in Web2, you give someone your credit card or your bank account. you can't stop them from charging you, right? Like maybe you go to your end credit card company and you want to report it as fraud or dispute the charge after the fact. But in crypto, you control your allowance. And so that end customer can always revoke the amount, lower it, higher it, sort of limit the interaction with the company. And it really puts a lot of control back to that end customer that doesn't exist in Web 2.
Yeah, I think you've given some great examples of some features that are kind of at the services layer above the traditional or the blockchain itself, which is really exciting. And I think that's why, even if you were to take a look at, Satoshi's vision of just being, a payment system, right? When we start to think about how exactly that's leveraged and the rubber hits the road, smart contracts are actually critical, where you're actually able to program these things in at the blockchain layer, right? And I think this gets into a topic of like, why exactly does a company like LoopCrypto need to exist? Doesn't the blockchain already allow me to just provide my crypto address to a customer and allow them to pay to me? Well, it sounds like you guys are working on a lot of these exciting features that sit on top of that layer and really enable real world production use cases.
Yeah. So our view is, the benefit of Web3, sort of as explained to the benefit of the customer, is self-custody. You can be your own bank, you can control your own assets, and then interoperability. You can take your wallet and go to a bunch of different dApps or different chains, and no one can stop you. Um, Beyond that, yes, I can send someone crypto, but as a practical matter, as a company, there's so much more involved than literally the money hitting my bank account. I mean, one easy thing is, who did the money come from, right? A wallet address is all I see on chain. I don't know what it's for. And I don't know who to attribute it to, which means I don't know how to let them into my system. I don't know how to put it in my accounting books. Um, Loop, as I mentioned at the beginning, by the nature of how we architected our system, we can give you all that information without you having to track it down, and also let you build automations around that. So we can send you a webhook when a transaction takes place and tell you an identifier of that customer, so then you know who to let into your system. And a lot of times, actually, this metadata means Loop is also really good even for just a one-time payment. If you just want to invoice someone or let them even just like buy an NFT, you can leverage this additional information to be able to collect one-off payments, but at scale. First, again, it being very manual. Another sort of use case of Loop that we haven't talked about yet is that we let you schedule payments. So a lot of DAOs are using Loop because it's a headache to set up a multi-sig and sign a gazillion transactions every time you want to pay a contributor or pay a grant in your community. But with Loop, you can provide that authorization up front and then schedule payments in our system. And so as time goes on, we'll process those payments when they become due. And it looks more like how you expect, like user roles and permissions and managing in a traditional system, where the person who has the keys to the bank isn't necessarily the person who needs to make the decision about who gets what. And you can sort of decouple those two things by using Loop.
Yeah, yeah. I think the DAO use case is super exciting. A lot of these DAOs, they kind of just take a bunch of money that's been paid in and it just lands in this address. And then there's very minimal transparency about where that's going, how it's getting paid. To your point, even if they are doing everything right and the only money that's leaving the treasury address is going to payments for services, then that's still not enough for transparency to the DAO community, right? Because how do they know what this address is that funds just went to, right?
Right.
It's just a bunch of
Yeah.
numbers, right? And I believe you guys provide a dashboard that you can make public for DAOs, something along those lines.
Yeah. So we have a dashboard that any company that uses Loop can use. And then we have a setting of it where we call it view only. So you can log in, you could see the payments that are scheduled. You can tag what a payment is for. You can add notes. You can add an invoice number. And so DAOs can attach, let's say, the vote that maybe happened on something like Tally to the invoice and to the payment. And you can now track much more easily and have more transparency around where the money is going and why.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. So why is something like, standard subscriptions or transparency around um, limiting how much you're spending, things like that? Why is that such a challenge in Web3?
Wait, sorry, can you phrase that? Say it
Yeah.
again.
So, for example, something like subscriptions, right? That's so easy in Web2, right? It's a dime a dozen, right? The whole business model is pretty much how every single service you sign up for on the internet, even Twitter now, you can't
Yeah,
necessarily use well without a subscription, right? It's tried and true business model, but it's also very easy to implement. But I
yeah.
don't see a lot of Web3 companies implementing it. Why is that?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first is you need a subscription management system. So again, for the longest time, Coinbase Commerce was really the only one in the payments game, and they're just a checkout page. They just show you a wallet address. But what a subscription management system does for you is it generates an invoice every month. It allows you to have like a list of who all your customers are. It allows you to charge for like quantity and variable rates. So if you want to go back and charge based on usage. And so something we built at Loop is, well, two things. One, we ended up building our own subscription management system so that if you want to auto generate invoices, you can do that natively on our system, on our platform. But the second is we built integrations with already existing systems like Stripe and ChargeBee.
Mm.
And we're able to do this because at its core, Loop is really back end infrastructure Rails. We built front ends because people need to be able to use our back ends, not because that's the core product. And so now, if you're a customer of Stripe and you're sending someone invoices in dollars, you can also send them a Loop checkout page. They can
Mm.
sign up. We'll create that customer for you in Stripe. When Stripe creates the invoice for you automatically, we'll pull that into our system, charge them on chain, and then post the information back to Stripe. When you go to the Loop, dashboard, you can find all the crypto information that you need. So, like, what token did they pay in, their transaction hash, the time of the transaction taking place. And when you look in Stripe, you can see your customer who subscribed to what, all the invoices that got paid, and the two systems, sort of work in sync.
Yeah. No, so it sounds like there's more than just catching up to what's possible in Web 2, but there's also added features that you get out of Web 3 payment rails that are very exciting, right? You had mentioned things like for the consumer being able to sit there and put a limit on how much you might be able to pay, right? I believe we refer to that as restricted allowance, right?
Yeah, that's that's one. Another big one is the end consumer can also see all their subscriptions in one place. So we have what we call a customer portal. You can log in with your wallet, and we'll show you every subscription that you have through Loop. And so now you have one place to manage both that allowance as well as manage the subscription, so you can cancel. That doesn't exist in Web 2, right? You can sign up for a bunch of things and you'll just forget that they're on your credit card charging you every month. And this is possible again because of blockchain's promise, right? Because you're your own bank and because it's interoperable. So if you're buying a subscription on Polygon and on Arbitrum, it doesn't matter. We can show you both.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And would that require me to be using a single address? What if I have multiple addresses?
You can just switch and
Yep.
connect.
Great. Love it. Love it. Cool. So what are maybe the most common products and services that people are buying with crypto payments?
Yeah, so a lot of them have to do around like running a crypto company. So like Satsuma, so indexing, maybe
Mm.
your node provider like QuickNode, a lot around DeFi trading analytics, um, KYCing for a community raise. A lot of times those raises happen in crypto, and people want to pay for those services in crypto.
Mhm.
Another one that we're kind of excited about is buy now, pay later. So, let's say you want to buy an NFT, you can do that on essentially credit, but you don't want to miss your payment, right? Because you could lose the underlying asset. And so you can use Loop to automate those recurring payments. It really is just a form of a loan, and that's the
Yeah.
type of lending we're seeing on chain.
Which is very popular, especially in some of these GameFi situations, right? Where you might need to have a very expensive NFT to begin playing, but then you can borrow, earn against it, right, and pay it off with those earnings.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is all happening in crypto. You're probably someone that doesn't want to purchase it in fiat.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Or you could even, let's say the earning token, right? You could pay it off with that earning token if the loaner wanted to accept that token, correct? So
Yeah,
let's say
that's
I'm
right.
playing a game and I'm earning, um, I forget what it is in Axie, what their token is that you earn, but let's say it's called ERN, right? Is what you earn, right? Then you can go ahead and you can pay off the loan that you have using ERN. You don't even have to go and convert and find the payment rails to do the swap. You can directly do it through the same.
Yeah, that's right. So we're compatible with any ERC20 token.
Yeah, great. What would you say is the most common tokens that people use to pay in crypto payments?
Stable coins by far, I think, is the number one token that people want to pay, especially in down markets. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, you don't want to spend your ETH if you think the value of it is going to go up. And so both companies and customers prefer paying in stable coins.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually found this interesting Coinbase Commerce dashboard, and I know the data might look is a bit dated here, but it does give some good insight into transactions over time, a lot of growth, and also I think to the point of the topic we were just discussing, you'll see the orange and gray here as to where we're at now. This is total dollar volume. Significant percentage of which is in USDT and USDC.
Yeah, yeah, totally makes sense to me. I think you can see the chart too in 2021 when like the value of crypto was super high, people spent more ETH, probably because the value of ETH was a lot higher as well.
Absolutely. And that's back to the previous point about, when I've made, I don't know, when I bought ETH at $200 and it's now worth 4,000, right? Spending $150 worth of my ETH isn't a big deal. But now all of a sudden, when ETH is back down a little bit, might be a bigger decision to try to sell some of that, especially if maybe I bought some at 3,500 and now it's down to 2,000.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Cool. So, what was the other question that I had? What about gas? How does gas work, right? Because I'm just kind of having this picture in my head about how things could go. I go to a store and I attempt to buy, I don't know, a Big Mac, right?
Right.
And ETH is going crazy and gas is $48. And all of a sudden, my total is over $50 for a simple Big Mac. How do we
Yeah.
mitigate this?
So the only time the end user pays gas is when they first give us that authorization to spend. So they need to sign a transaction that provides that authorization. And then going forward, actually Loop pays all the gas. So
Hmm.
we call a function in their contract and that processes the payment. And because we call it, we pay gas. Um, in this example, our philosophy, and I think this is probably where crypto is trending in general, is that smaller dollar value transactions aren't going to happen on like Ethereum L1. We see a lot of them moving to L2s like Arbitrum or Optimism, or to sidechains like Polygon. And the large dollar value transactions might still exist on Ethereum. And that's also just good economics because if you're paying, you know, 3%, like I said, for like in fiat, but and it's a $10,000 transaction, but Loop is only charging you, let's say, even $20, it's still much cheaper to you fee wise to use Ethereum than it is to use, crypto or fiat to begin with, because the percent obviously goes up with the dollar amount.
Yeah, especially, if it's a American Express or Discover or, whatever it might be. Yeah, that's high fees that you're paying as the vendor.
Yeah. And maybe something to add there, like our vision of the future is really at its core, it's not a sexy topic, but Loop is a payment processor. We help facilitate the movement of money from one person to the other, based on what the sender is, telling us we're allowed to do and what the receiver has asked for. And that work we can decentralize. We can allow others to be participants in the system and pay that price of calling the smart contract, but also earn the revenue. And in a
Mm.
perfectly competitive market, you would expect that fee then to be really tight. I mean, the reason fees are expensive right now in Web2 is because it's an oligopoly, right? There's basically three players that control the entire market. But in
Hmm.
crypto, it doesn't have to be that way. We're building the system to prove that this technology works, but can open it up to others to also run bots, essentially compete with Loop bots, but then it compresses the fees for everyone.
Very interesting. I like that a lot, actually. And, you started off that description with, it's not necessarily sexy to talk about, but that's I think exciting, where we're at that point in Web3 where we realize this. I think for so long, everything that was trying to happen on the blockchain had to be the most marketing, you know, driven, exciting topic. But, Circle, I think it was the CPO of Circle who said, boring is good business, right? The most
Yeah,
boring technology companies are sometimes the most lucrative, right?
yeah, yeah. That's great to hear. It's
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, it's
Um,
necessary.
it
It's
is.
necessary.
It's absolutely critical. It is. So you had talked a little bit about how a few times the integration to Stripe, and mentioned ChargeBee as well, right? But there's, you know, all different things that can be built on top of Loop, kind of like what you were just describing, but other types of features and functionality too, right? I believe you have some customers working with you building some really interesting things.
Yeah, that's right. So, like I said, Loop is really just the payment rails. So, for example, I mean, besides Stripe and ChargeBee, which are clear examples of front end building on top of our protocol, we're working with like the integral team to help pull in, let's say, your invoice number, right? And so you can use Loop to collect your subscriptions or to make payments, and that should flow seamlessly into your accounting system, right? You shouldn't have to um, like copy and paste it in. And this is all information that exists on the blockchain, and you can permission to our backend.
Hmm.
Another example is you could be your own like invoicing company. So something like Request Network that has front ends that let you invoice, but doesn't have automation. And you could use Loop to leverage that automation and provide that service to your end customers. Um, so yeah, we have. I guess I don't want to spill the beans too much on some of our integrations coming out, but you definitely can use our payment rails for a variety of DApp front ends.
I love it. That's very exciting. So that means
Yeah,
for
and
you as a listener to make sure that you stay on top of all of the exciting things that the Loop team will be surely announcing very soon.
just to add to that, like our philosophy is being a payment processor alone is a full-time job, just as it is being a subscription management company is a full-time job, or being a DAO payroll company is a full-time job. And we built the MVPs of these use cases to show that it works, but companies should focus on what they do best in terms of servicing, whoever that customer segment is, and can leave and outsource to Loop the payment processing part, which again, like the promise of crypto is like the Lego blocks, right? You don't
Yeah.
have to build everything yourself. You don't have to ask for permission to use someone else's system, and everything works. It's that interoperability.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the promise. And I do believe that we're starting to reach that realization. It's really exciting to see. I've been in the space for since 2016 now. So I've seen a lot of this develop, and it really feels as though we're just starting to get to that point. And I think
Yeah.
companies like Loop are what's bringing us there, right? That we're starting to get those layers of things where, people build out their product at first, and sometimes they don't immediately think, all right, well, my MVP feature is that someone can easily build on top of me. First, I have to have my own business that makes money, right? But
Right.
now I think people are getting more mature, and they're at the point where either they've built that piece or they've truly started from the beginning with the Web3 ethos of, hey, that interoperability and the building blocks.
Right. Yeah, definitely. As as your customers demand more feature sets, it becomes clear you can't do it all. You in the buy versus build decision in crypto, it's a lot easier to buy to partner because the integration width is a lot lower because everything's interoperable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually something that, you said you can't build it all. And that was a key tenet in us launching our marketplace. So at QuickNode, we have all sorts of API services for, blockchain developers, whatever it might be. But we also realize there's so many other tools out there that people need, and we wanted to make it available to them very easily. So we just kind of have a marketplace where third parties can come list their products, easily click with one button and add those pieces on, right? And it's just kind of patching in another interoperable layer, right, to make things as easy as possible and accessible to developers.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, running your own node is also a great example. I think, like,
Yeah,
when I got into crypto, your instinct was to run your own node, but then you realize, like, you have to have uptime. Like, what do you do if it goes down and everyone's sleeping? And really, in Web 2, everyone uses AWS, and like, why wouldn't you outsource what is a full-time job to someone who focuses on it all day?
absolutely, absolutely. And you don't need to get me started on all of the complexity that goes into trying to run your own nodes. It's
Yeah.
really interesting. I mean, the easiest sales that we have at QuickNode are companies that try to do it themselves, because it is just so labor intensive. And once you attempt to scale it, right, you might have something, oh, hey, I'm just running my own thing at my house to be able to, play around. But all of a sudden, when you want to do this as a business, it just becomes completely unreasonable from a cost perspective, and trying to make it available globally becomes a huge deterrent. So
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. What are maybe some of the biggest challenges that that you've faced trying to run a crypto company, maybe specifically as a payments company?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is for any payments company is building trust. Like payments is a really important aspect of, other our clients, and they don't want to mess it up. And so that means having systems that are really reliable. That means showing all the redundancies that we've built in and for the thing just to work, and sort of
Yeah,
working with our customers to show them and educate them about our system, about security, about how this authorization and allowance function works. And that's trust is really built over time and like doing what you said you were going to do. Um,
mhm,
the second, I would say, big thing in being a payments company is being smart about building a business model that is like legally viable. So we worked a lot with lawyers early on to make sure how we structured our technology did not make us a money transmitter, was in line with regulation. And that in turn also helped us, getting banked and
yeah,
being like a genuine a US American company and being able to like operate here. Um, and it's expensive, but unfortunately it's necessary to do it early on because what we didn't want was to go down a rabbit hole and build a thing that we later found out, would be problematic for everyone.
Yeah, I think that is really critical that you dig in ahead of time, mostly around framing your business model, right? You might go down a path and then realize, oh, wow, I have to go to every single state, apply, and get approved as a money transmitter. Well, if you could
Yeah.
have just taken the business model and tweaked it slightly to have avoided that, you'll save yourself a lot of time and hassle long term. So I think that's a really good piece of advice for people.
Yeah. And I think the hard thing is like getting a lawyer that understands the tech. We work with this lawyer called Michael Moser, and he really understood or understands how blockchains work as
Mm,
well as the regulatory landscape. And I don't know if there's a lot of lawyers that can do both. And
yeah.
I should also say, Andreessen A16Z, who's our lead investor, they have a regulatory team that was also super helpful with us up front to do an initial due diligence and then recommended Michael.
Yeah, I think that's also a great point for anyone who is thinking about starting a business, that your investors aren't just people that are giving you money, right? You pick people that are strategic, especially when, you're in a market where you can pick. Right now, it might be a little bit more challenging to find, enough investors, but these people should be coming to the table with more than just their money. And I think A16Z, Tiger, etc. They've been in the space for long enough where they have the connections that they can make. They've vetted, right, all of the different vendors that can be leveraged, and being able to lean on them to point you in the right direction really, really is beneficial for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. We've been super happy with A16Z, and they have like tens of maybe up to like 50 or 60 people who solely exist to help you build your company and like troubleshoot some of these issues, like an
Yeah,
operations team.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So, closing out, I just have a couple questions I like to bring up with all the guests. One of them is, what Web3 use case do you think has the greatest potential?
Yeah. So my first idea actually to building crypto was this use case, but I don't think I'm the right person. And that is Web3 ticketing. You know, it annoys me to no end that you buy a ticket on Ticketmaster, you get a PDF, and then you have to sell the PDF to someone else when you don't know if they've duplicated or not. And so the answer to that is you have to use StubHub and now give them a slice of the revenue. And for the initial, act or whoever it is that's the artist, they don't have good data around, what the ticket ended up selling for, who ended up going, and it's so clearly an easy or best solved, I think, by a blockchain, right? Like, it could be an NFT. You know the NFT is real because it exists on chain. You can send it to someone else, and you can get all the data around that sale.
I couldn't agree with you more. So we do a quick pitch competition where we work with a bunch of startups and give them access to a prize pool. And one of the winners was ETH Pass. And they are working on this exact thing. We're really excited and impressed by their pitch. I think that, to your point, this seems like the most native blockchain use case. And it isn't just a, as some people will say, it's not a vitamin, it's a painkiller, right? And it really
Yeah.
needs to be a painkiller for something to become pervasive. Right now, something like Ticketmaster is just so egregious in the cuts that they take for things and the fees that they apply. And being able to address that, especially in a Web3 manner, I think is a huge opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I can't wait to use it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. So the last question I had is just, who else would you suggest that I have on? Could be somebody from the above use case, payments, whatever it might be.
Yeah, so Noah from Parcel, they're doing buy now, pay later into NFT ecosystem and really focus on gaming. Another example is Dan from Ansible Labs. They're building an off ramp, so we partner with them for companies that want to accept crypto, but immediately change the fiat because perhaps they operate mostly in fiat themselves. Uh, Two other good ones is Mika from Parallax. Parallax is in cross-border payments. She's focused mostly on Southeast Asia. And then Will from Decent, they're doing NFT purchases in crypto and have SDK and developer tools around NFTs.
Love it. Yeah, definitely. We'll check out what they're working on. And last but not least, you want to let people know where they can follow along to all the updates about LoopCrypto?
Oh, yeah. So you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Eleni Thinks, or you can follow Loop on Twitter. I think it's at LoopCrypto_XYZ. Or you can go to our website and sign up for a newsletter. And so that's loopcrypto.xyz.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot. Have a nice day.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.